She never wanted to attend that wedding. If it wasn't for her best friend's insistence, she would have stayed home, far away from the glittering halls and the arrogant people who lived in that world. But sometimes, life forces you into the very places you try to avoid just to teach you who you truly are. Emily Harper had never wanted to attend a lavish wedding. She was a quiet, simple woman who preferred staying home with a good book over walking into glittering halls filled with strangers. But her best friend, Megan, had begged her, "Emily, please come with me. My boss, Jessica Adams, is getting married, and it's going to be huge. I don't want to go alone. It's going to be at the Grand Oak Ballroom in downtown Chicago. It'll be beautiful." Reluctantly, Emily agreed, only to support Megan. She didn't own expensive clothes or designer shoes. She chose the nicest thing she had, a soft, pale blue dress with no fancy label, paired with simple beige flats. She left her naturally curly brown hair loose, adding only a touch of lip gloss. She didn't care about making an impression. She just wanted to be there for Megan. When Emily stepped into the Grand Oak Ballroom, she instantly felt out of place. The chandeliers sparkled like 1,000 tiny stars. Elegant ice sculptures lined the entrance, and the guests shimmered in $1,000 gowns and tuxedos. Every woman seemed to float by in satin and sequins, the scent of luxury perfumes trailing in the air. Emily's heartbeat quickened, but she reminded herself that it was just a wedding. She stayed close to Megan, hoping to quietly blend into the crowd. Then Jessica Adams appeared. The bride, Megan's boss, was stunning, tall, confident, and poised in a custom Vera Wang gown that glittered with delicate beading. Jessica's blonde hair was swept into an elegant updo, her diamond necklace catching the light as she moved. Jessica's icy blue eyes swept across the room and landed on Emily, pausing with sharp, undeniable focus. Emily felt the weight of that gaze immediately. Jessica leaned toward a group of bridesmaids and whispered something that sent a ripple of quiet laughter through them. Emily felt a knot in her stomach, but pretended not to notice. A few minutes later, as Emily passed by the hors d'oeuvre table, Jessica made her first direct hit. "Oh, I almost thought you were one of the servers," Jessica said loud enough for several nearby guests to hear. "That dress is brave. I guess comfort really is a choice." The people around her chuckled, some quietly, some openly. Emily's cheeks flushed, but she forced a polite smile and quickly walked away, wishing she could vanish into the walls. But Jessica wasn't finished. Not even close. Throughout the evening, Jessica continued to target Emily as if it were a game. No matter where Emily tried to stand, no matter how much she avoided attention, Jessica always seemed to find her. As Emily walked across the ballroom carrying a small, carefully wrapped gift for Megan, Jessica's voice sliced through the air like a blade. "Oh, look, our little thrift queen brought a present. I hope it's not secondhand." Her words were syrupy sweet, but dripping with mockery. More heads turned, more chuckles, some even nodding along as if Jessica's cruelty were the evening's entertainment. Emily's heart pounded violently in her chest. She tightened her grip on the gift, her hands trembling as she struggled to hold her composure. Megan whispered urgently, "Just ignore her. She does this to everyone." But Emily wasn't sure she could. She could feel the humiliation settling over her like a heavy coat she couldn't take off. Jessica wasn't done. Later, as Emily walked near the dance floor, Jessica raised her voice again, now with more people listening. "Seriously, who let her in? This isn't a Goodwill fashion show." The laughter came in waves now, loud and unfiltered. Emily lowered her head, her breath shaky, her feet growing heavier with each step. She wanted to disappear. She could feel her body shrinking under the weight of their stares. She scanned the Grand Oak Ballroom for a quiet exit, but couldn't find one that didn't feel like total defeat. Megan tried to stand up for her. "Jessica, that's enough," Megan whispered, her voice tense. But Jessica just laughed, brushing her manicured hand along her silk gown, as if Emily's very presence had soiled the room. "Oh, please, don't offend her. Some people should know their place." Emily's throat tightened painfully. She could taste the bitterness of shame rising in her chest, but she refused to let her tears fall. She wasn't going to give Jessica the satisfaction of watching her crumble. The sparkling chandeliers, the elegant decor, the perfectly arranged flower walls, All of it began to blur as her vision watered, but her legs stayed rooted. A quiet voice inside her whispered, "Don't you dare walk out. You don't have to leave because someone else decided you don't belong." Jessica's attacks grew sharper, more public, and more deliberate as the evening wore on. During the wedding toast, the best man stood with pride, raising his glass to celebrate the couple's kindness and generosity. But Jessica couldn't help herself. As the applause settled, she looked directly at Emily and said with a sugar-coated smirk, "Well, I even invited charity cases tonight. I guess I've done my part for the community." Her voice carried effortlessly across the ballroom, landing like a punch. The room quieted, and slowly, eyes shifted toward Emily. The laughter that followed wasn't soft anymore. It was loud, unapologetic, and cruel. Emily stood near a table by the wall, her hands shaking as she touched the petals of the floral centerpiece, pretending to admire it, pretending she didn't hear. Megan immediately stepped to her side and whispered, "Emily, we can leave now. You don't deserve this. Let's go." But Emily swallowed the lump in her throat and shook her head firmly. "No," she whispered back, her voice cracking but steady. "I shouldn't have to leave. I did nothing wrong." Her breathing was shallow, her palms clammy, but she knew if she walked out now, she would carry this humiliation forever. Jessica would win. Jessica's next move was merciless. As the wedding cake was brought out, a grand 5-tier vanilla masterpiece decorated with edible gold, the bride seized the perfect moment to deliver her cruelest blow. With a sparkling fork in hand, Jessica carefully cut a small piece, then turned, grinning maliciously as she sauntered toward Emily. In front of at least 30 watching guests, Jessica held out the cake, forcing Emily to pause mid-step. "Here," she said loudly, holding the cake slice closer, her fake kindness dripping with venom. "Have a taste. I bet you've never had real cake like this before, right?" Emily froze, her heart hammering violently in her chest. She tried to step aside, but Jessica laughed and with a quick, mocking swipe, smeared the frosting across Emily's cheek, pressing it deliberately against her skin. The guests gasped, some in genuine shock, others struggling to hide their smirks. Jessica chuckled as she wiped her hand delicately with a napkin. "Oh, don't worry, it's not too sweet. You wouldn't know anyway, would you? You probably only eat leftovers." The laughter erupted around her again. Emily stood completely still, the sweet, sticky frosting clinging to her skin, the heat of humiliation flooding her entire body. She felt the tears threaten to fall, but she held them back, locking her jaw tight. Her throat ached, her vision blurred, but her legs did not move. Megan was horrified, urging Emily to leave, but Emily stayed frozen, not out of weakness, but out of stubborn courage. She wouldn't give Jessica the pleasure of watching her retreat. Emily slowly wiped the frosting from her cheek with a trembling hand, lifted her chin, and silently turned away, not to run, but to reclaim her air, her space, her dignity. Jessica's cruel laughter rang in her ears as Emily fought to steady her breathing. The walls of the grand oak ballroom seemed to close in around her. The chandeliers now felt oppressive, the golden drapes suffocating. She wanted to scream, but all she did was stand tall. "I am not leaving," she told herself fiercely. "I belong here, even if they don't see it." Even though her body begged her to escape, she stayed. She stayed because walking out would have meant Jessica was right, and she wasn't. Emily was not less. Emily was not invisible. Emily was not disposable. And just when the weight of the night felt unbearable, the groom took the microphone. Just when the humiliation had reached its unbearable peak, just when Emily thought no one in that room would ever see her as anything but a joke, Ethan, the groom, stepped forward. He slowly climbed onto the small stage, the weight of the room falling into complete silence around him. Every guest turned their eyes to him, their chatter evaporating as quickly as their amusement. His jaw was tight, his expression calm but sharp, as though he had been holding something inside all night and had finally reached his breaking point. Ethan's gaze didn't wander. It didn't scan the crowd or look to his best man for support. His focus was locked directly on Jessica, his soon-to-be wife, who was still laughing with her bridesmaids, savoring the last bite of wedding cake she had used to humiliate Emily just moments ago. Jessica's laughter faltered when she noticed the seriousness in his eyes. Into the microphone, his voice rang out low but strong. "I've been watching everything you've done tonight, watching how you've treated someone who came here with kindness in her heart, someone who did nothing but show up to celebrate your day." Jessica's smile faded into confusion. "What are you talking about, Ethan?" she said with an uneasy chuckle, waving her hand as if brushing away the weight of his words. "Come on, it's just a bit of fun." Ethan didn't smile. His voice stayed steady, but there was steel beneath his calm. "No, Jessica, this wasn't fun. It wasn't teasing. It was cruelty. I've seen it in your eyes all night, the way you took pleasure in humiliating her. And it's not just tonight. I realize now this is who you are. I don't want to marry someone who can be this heartless." Gasps rippled across the ballroom. Some guests looked at Jessica, others at Ethan, unsure whether they were watching a sudden twist or an unspeakable disaster unfold in real time. Jessica's face twisted into panic. "You're leaving me? For her? For that girl?" She pointed sharply toward Emily, as though simply saying out loud would make the idea absurd. Her voice grew louder, desperate now. "Are you seriously choosing her over me? You don't even know her." Ethan's voice rose just slightly, firm and final. "No, Jessica. I'm choosing what's right over what looks good. I'm choosing humanity. I'm choosing kindness. Because no one, no matter how they dress or where they come from, deserves what you've done to her tonight." His words hung in the air, slicing through the silence, each one carrying the weight of finality. Jessica's hands trembled as she tried to argue, her voice cracking as she pleaded. "But this is our wedding. You can't just walk away like this. Over her? Over someone like that?" Ethan's eyes, sharp and unwavering, met hers one last time. "I'm walking away for my own dignity, for what I believe in. I refuse to start a marriage with someone who sees people as less than her. I refuse to spend my life with someone who laughs at another person's pain." His voice dropped into a deep calm, but the words struck like a thunderclap. "I'm leaving you for the sake of humanity, Jessica, because you are not worthy of me." The room froze, the weight of his declaration crashing over the elegant hall like a cold wave. Jessica's mouth opened, but no words came. Her carefully constructed world, her perfect day, began to crumble around her. Ethan carefully placed a microphone back on its stand. Without looking at Jessica again, he turned away from the stage and walked directly toward Emily, who stood motionless near the edge of the room, still feeling the sweet frosting sticky on her skin. His steps were firm, not hurried, not hesitant. He passed guests who parted silently, watching him with wide, stunned eyes. Emily could barely believe he was approaching her. She stood frozen, unsure whether to meet his gaze or retreat. But when he stopped in front of her, his expression softened completely. His voice was quiet now, just for her. "I'm so sorry," he said, his eyes brimming with sincerity. "I'm sorry for everything you've endured tonight. You didn't deserve any of it. I should have stepped in sooner." Emily's throat tightened as she struggled to find her words. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you for seeing me." Ethan smiled gently, as if that moment mattered more than anything else that day. He carefully took her hand, not as a performance, not to make a statement to the room, but as a real gesture of human connection. His touch was light but steady, as though anchoring her back into the world. "People like her," he said softly. "They forget what truly matters. It's not the dress. It's not the venue. It's not the guest list. It's how we treat people. And tonight you reminded me of that." Emily blinked away her tears, overwhelmed by his words, by the fact that someone had finally chosen to stand by her. In that moment, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. Without needing to say anything else, they turned together and slowly walked out of Grand Oak Ballroom, leaving behind a silent, stunned crowd, leaving behind glitter and cruelty, walking toward. Outside the Grand Oak Ballroom, the cold night air wrapped around them like a quiet relief. Emily's heart was still racing, her mind struggling to process everything that had just happened. She had walked into that wedding as someone barely noticed, someone expected to quietly endure mockery and vanish. But now, she wasn't sure what she had become. She glanced at Ethan, walking steadily beside her, his hand still gently holding hers as if he were afraid to let her go. They stopped under the soft glow of the streetlights lining Michigan Avenue. The city buzzed in the distance, but around them, there was an almost sacred stillness. Emily turned to him, searching his face, half expecting him to suddenly regret his decision, to say something about the wedding he had just walked away from. But Ethan didn't look back. He didn't even seem to hesitate. "I'm really sorry for tonight," he said again, his voice soft but firm. "I should have said something earlier. I should have protected you from the very first moment." His eyes met hers, deeply honest. "I thought I knew Jessica. I thought we were building a life together. But tonight, I realized I didn't really know her at all." Emily shook her head gently, still unsure what to say. "You didn't have to do that. You gave up your wedding. You gave up everything." He smiled, but there was no sadness in it. "No, Emily, I walked away from the wrong thing. I didn't give up anything that mattered. Marrying someone like Jessica would have meant giving up my values, my self-respect, my ability to look at myself in the mirror. I couldn't build a life on cruelty." Emily's chest tightened, her throat thick with unshed tears. She wasn't used to this, to being defended, to being seen, to being chosen. "No one's ever stood up for me like that," she whispered, almost afraid to speak the words aloud. Ethan gently squeezed her hand. "Well, they should have, and you should expect nothing less. You deserve respect, Emily. You deserve kindness, not just from me, from everyone." For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there under the city lights, the cold breeze brushing against their faces, both of them quietly realizing that something powerful had just unfolded. Not a love story in the traditional sense, but something far more human. Emily glanced down at her simple pale blue dress, the very dress that had drawn so much ridicule just hours earlier. But now, as she looked at it, she didn't feel ashamed. It was still her dress. It was still her, and that was enough. "I didn't come to the wedding expecting anything," she said softly, almost smiling. "I just came because my friend asked me to. I thought I'd be invisible the whole night." Ethan's gaze softened, his voice calm but certain. "You were never invisible. They just didn't know how to see you." His words landed deeply in her heart, soft and heavy like falling snow. They didn't rush to go anywhere. They simply walked together through the streets of Chicago, their footsteps slow, their hearts light. Emily realized she hadn't just survived that evening. She had reclaimed something she didn't even know she'd lost. She didn't leave that ballroom with shame. She left it with dignity. And the man who walked beside her didn't leave with regret. He left with clarity, with the understanding that humanity, decency, and courage will always matter more than chandeliers, designer dresses, and grand performances. Sometimes, the biggest decision in life isn't choosing who to marry. It's choosing who you refuse to become.